even in character.
These young Kenyans already speak English, a legacy of the British Empire in Africa. But now they have decided to learn
但是在哪个运动上，
Chinese.
所以今后我们再组织各项。
This is the Confucius Institute at Nairobi University. For these students, taking Chinese is, as they say, a no-brainer.
Chinese language is important because China is growing so much, and the influence of China now in Africa and most of the world is higher than it was last years.
What about Chinese athletes?
Africans want to benefit from China's economic boom. The Chinese are bullish on Africa. They want the raw materials to fuel their ravenous economy. 1/3 of what's exported from Africa to China is oil. But more and more goods are moving in the other direction, from China to Africa, arriving, as it were, right on the continent's doorstep. All the goods that come from China to East Africa arrive here at the port of Mombasa. In fact, the massive cranes unloading the container ships are also made in China. It is just the first clue of the China connection. The Mombasa to Nairobi Road, the vital link from the east coast to the interior of Africa. It used to be the worst 350-mile stretch of road in the region. 8 years ago, a huge section was rebuilt by the Chinese. Ahmed Abdullah has just begun his 1,200-mile journey from Mombasa on the eastern edge of Africa to Congo.
Now it's good. Now it's very good.
And before?
Before, bad.
So what sorts of things imported from China are those trucks carrying? Just about everything you can imagine, from pots and pans to the most sophisticated computers, all cheap. Go to the electronic shops and you'll find them. Shoes from China seem to be everywhere.
The cheapest, they are from China.
From China?
Yeah.
The cheapest ones?
Yeah.
There are loads and loads of them, overwhelming African shoemakers like this man. His name is Emmanuel, and he lives in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, where we traveled next. His tiny company, one employee, makes shoes, also belts and handbags. He says it's difficult for us to compete with Chinese products. They are sold at much lower prices than what we sell. They are cheap, $6 for a pair of the Chinese shoes, about $4 less than the Tanzanian shoes. In a country where people don't have much money, no contest. U.S. diplomat George Aldridge monitors Chinese commerce in East Africa.
This might be the great irony of our new century so far, that a ostensibly communist country has become the most ruthless capitalist country in the world, undercutting producers, not just American producers, but African producers.
This is a fairly typical market by African standards, and many of the products here, a growing number of the products here, are Chinese. But it's not just the products that are from China. Many of the people who own these shops are from China. The man in the shop next door, Fazil Natumani, blames the Chinese for undercutting everyone. If we could chase them away, he says, we would. It would be better if they weren't here. The big surprise in all this is that China doesn't see itself as a competitor or the so-called ruthless capitalist aggressor.
Since we are both belonging to the developing country and we have our similar experience and similar task for Chinese and African governments to develop their economy.
If you drive around the capital of Tanzania, it doesn't take long to find the Chinese at work. We were allowed onto one building site, and it helps understand how Chinese companies are consistently able to win contracts over Western companies. 8 Chinese construction workers, 50 Tanzanians. As far as the Chinese go, they get no vacations to China, no holidays the entire time they're on this project, and it lasts 2 years. They still have 1 year to go. Their only connection to home is the TV set. Meals they cook themselves. They work long hours, but there is a noticeably relaxed interaction between the Chinese and the Tanzanians. Some of the Chinese have worked in Tanzania before, and a bit like the young Kenyans learning Mandarin, they have learned Swahili. Not necessarily to make friends. It's clear they're here to do business, just like the Chinese sending the cheap shoes, building roads, and buying the oil. I'm Martin Seemungal reporting for World Focus in East Africa.